difficult in a way because you've got to support yourself in the lay world at the same time that you're
Take care.
I mean, in the West.
But what I was thinking is that more of the style of life, you say that you find it quite good, except that you cannot support your writing and your aspirations in certain things. But what about the lifestyle, where it's quite strict, the lifestyle where you get up certain time in the morning, meditations and chanting or whatever.
It's very beautiful. No, not so beautiful. I mean, not so difficult. It's very beautiful. Get up at 4:30 and meditate in the morning and in the evening till the sun goes down, and you don't eat after noon and all of that. For one thing, in a tropical country, this was created in a tropical country, and so you don't need as much energy because it's so hot. It makes sense in the tropics to live that way. And you get up at 4:30 because it's cool then.
And so far we enjoy being the lay people, I mean that just ordinary, just like us, not the...
Oh yeah, Even though I think I totally support the Sangha and the importance of the Sangha, but not for me personally.
Well, you know that Buddha always say that if all become the novice, who will support you? Yeah, each of us has our own duty. Okay, if we are the lay, so we support the monk. If they are the monks or the nuns, so should be the good one.
I think the Sangha way very tough way you have to make a lot of sacrifice to put yourself in loneliness, or you cannot express yourself. You're always so quiet. You're always thinking of your mind. I find that I can't take it because I find if I keep sitting and thinking and analyzing myself, I feel very tired. Because instead of after all the meditation, we more because of so much of thinking.
My thing, I want to progress as a human being.
I have the opinion.
Okay, go ahead.
Lay people
That's my opinion,
can
you know.
meet Buddhism through monks and nuns who whole life he devoted to the Buddhist and Buddhism. Yes, so what's the day?
Speak slowly. It will be easier for others, the rest to grasp what our reverence is. You mean? Okay, right? Okay.
So in the Nikaya, we have there was written of our Buddhist lay people's duty and the monk's duty is suffering. Nowadays, most Westerners and especially Western practitioners and Western people don't know about our ethics or our rules. So just from their greed, they want to practice more higher than monk, and they don't want to support anymore. I want to live the same level as a monk and a nun. That's not perfect attitude as a lay person.
Oh, I think it's very appropriate. I have vows. I have Pratimoksha vows. I have Bodhicitta vows. I have Tantric vows. I have all of those vows. I just don't have a nun's vows, and I don't want the nun's vows.
Without monk, you
But I
cannot
have
meet
all the
Buddhism
others.
in this period.
I disagree. That's okay.
可以讲一下吗？
I'm not going to argue.
And as myself, I don't receive many donations. I give a lesson in the university I own by myself, and I teach to lay people. And though I'm a nun, but I donate to each person or each temple.
Yeah.
So monks only does not receive support. Sometimes monks can give the donation to the lay people also.
Yeah. Everybody gets support.
I think basically it's like this because our reverence is sharing a view as a nun, and then you are sharing the view. Our friend is sharing the view as a lay person, right?
Yeah.
So I think basically you see because
But the most important thing is we must follow Buddha's teaching, not our personal opinion.
Oh, well,
那翻译一下好吗？
yeah, yeah.
Okay, because I think what our reference is trying to put on is as a layperson, right? So they are our teachers, right? So because they are the full-time practitioners, they have more times to practice, to study Buddha's teaching than us as a layperson who are in the society. No doubt like our friend I know your name. You're from okay, you're from USA, right? So because now you might have more time, right, as compared to any of the lay Buddhists, right? Because you are a retired person, so maybe your time you can devote more time in study the Buddha's teaching.
Right.
But the thing is, you see, because we're as a lay person, we don't observe the precepts like what the monks are doing. You see, so there's still, there's still a gap. There's still a difference there. See, no matter how we practice, so the precepts that we observe will be a bit different from what they are doing.
But I think I can become enlightened as a layperson.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's what I'm going for. I'm
Yes,
going for
correct.
enlightenment.
Correct. But we still need, the Sangha.
I'm not trying to belittle them or anything.
Yes,
I
yes.
want them there. I
So,
think they're necessary.
so I think
But,
you might be you understand what she means. She's not trying to deny. The monk or whatsoever, right? So what she's trying to put on is, as a lay person, to have the Buddha's teaching can be enlightened too. Correct.
I think it's not circle. There's why so much conflict.
No, there's so much conflict. It's not wrong. I think okay. So I think maybe.
From what I understand from you, is this concept of the Buddha way is applicable whether you are Sangha.
Easy for us to practice. How to practice? You have to start practice first by being alone and thinking how your mind is working. First, you have to practice by meditation, understand how this mind is. Is my mind breathe or mind?
They are, not to the individual person, not to what they know or don't know, but to what they symbolize and represent. And that's what we're honoring. And we have to each time figure out whether this person is deserving. It's a waste of our time. And if we, so at least that's where I come from.
Well, no, it's not a matter of respect.
Always deserve our respect. It's just we're discussing normally should be.
Oh, I see. Yes, that's my question. No, I would never have anything but disrespect. So, knowledge, it's about, in terms of just dharmas. Is that too hot a topic?
佛教是讲因果、讲业力，那就看你的前世，它是不是像密宗所讲的，你是不是在轮回、在转世过来的？那如果他转世过来的话，那他是轮回做再趁愿再来，他曾经前辈子是出家人，他是趁愿再来，那变成说他这辈子他刚出家，你是已经在佛寺庙里面待了20-30年了，但是相信他的程度还是比他高。
Because now you are comparing that she has been in the Buddhism for about 20 over years. So your knowledge in Buddhism is very deep. Compare with beginning who just become a beginning. So maybe with comparison of her knowledge and hers, there might be
a little bit different. But according to her, according to Venerable, she might be the last life, in the last, he might be a beginning, and this life he becomes a beginning again. So we say we cannot make comparison of knowledge in that way.
所以说我们不能，我们不管
Yeah, the last life and this life. So come back and he become beginning again. So when you cannot make comparison of the Buddhist, the knowledge of Buddhism in that way. Because it depends on the inner.
那就是说，我们知道这个原理之后，我们知道这个因果，佛教讲因果轮回。那我们知道这个因果，但是现在我们大家都是凡夫众生，我们不知道哪一个人是前辈，在世再来人，我们都不知道，所以我们这以不轻视他人为主，我们要有一个很谦卑的心。大家都是佛，大家都是未来佛。我们用一种很谦卑的心，唐不轻菩萨常讲：“我不轻视汝等，汝等即将是佛。”
So we have to be humble because we won't know which one of us here, our last life, is involved in Buddhism or how that our Buddhism. So we have to be humble. We cannot judge.
You have to book by its power.
But that's the book by the power. Yes, yes. Our father are true. So we cannot just say that, okay, I have
So we should treat everybody like
equal.
equal and they are the future, the next leader.
Yes, we have to treat everybody as equal.
Yeah. 他可以用英文帮他翻译。
We would like to hear also.
You have to shout.
She's in monastic Mongolia, and there are 40 nuns in temple. 그 만화가도 다음 판부터 다음 판부터 신이 내는 다른 다음 다 하루 있었다. Big company, big assembly, and once a month, and a big chanting.
Got children instead of abandoning her in a home or anything like that. She gains the merits that but she didn't throw the children away. She didn't thought, those children are very popular. There are some people who test that even nowadays also. Instead of that, she take care of it. So she got two ways of getting some good ideas by getting this type of children and by getting the true knowledge from two different religious beliefs.
So tries to do by the way, also this kind of opinion
First. Oh. Why do you choose Theravada then?
Very nice.
Because people tend to follow more the Japanese everything boils down to the sincerity. Whatever you do, you must come out with sincerity. No point if you were looking for money, also be a businessman or a doctor, you make tons of money, but not to at the expense of people contributing their hard-earned money to your responsibility for this life. Maybe if I come to meet a nun that interests me, I might be next wife.
Affinity.
Yeah.
We only have affinity towards good people
And the hardship the nun has gone through, everyone telling her sister, I really don't want to go through. Yeah, not easy. Yeah, I know. But I admire them. It's not easy. Their strength is there.
those genuine monk and nuns, the hardship they go through, very strong will. You've got to be strong. You've got to be strong. Yeah, this is
the Buddha always say that pay the worship to him. The best way is like this. Not to give money, give candle, light, anything. That is good in certain level. But the best for us and to worship, the most worship to Buddha is practice. So I set up my meditation center for retreat and for the people who has sincerely practice go to retreat in my meditation center in Thailand. And we hope that our aim that is to end our suffering. If it cannot be possible in this life, then in the next life.
To serve the people, it's a
again to hear the excellent presentations of these wonderful scholars who sit next to me. As a writer, I love language. So I'm happy to be moderating this panel, which is called Translating the Dharma, Buddhism, Multiculturalism, and Language. Language matters very much to us as women in the Dharma. For instance, think about the names by which we are known. The texts that either include us or exclude us, that respect us or denigrate us. Then there are the chants and other liturgy, language that is inclusive of women's experience or not. And then there are the stories about women that are told in our Dharma study. Language defines many dimensions of how we are viewed and presented in the Dharma, in the practice and the teachings both. And therefore, language affects how we are treated. Each of these women next to me has investigated some aspect of the use of language and how it impacts us. Our first speaker is Christy Yuling Chang, who is an assistant professor in the Department of Foreign Languages and Translation at National Taiwan University. She received her doctorate in linguistics from the University of Hawaii with research on cross-cultural language learning. She is currently resident director of the Council on International Educational Exchange in Taiwan. She is also a major organizer of this conference, as many of us know. And the title of her talk is The Name of the Nun, Towards the Use of Inclusive Language and True Equality in the Buddhist Community.
Well, I know this topic, the name of the nun, may sound a little bit strange to many of you, but let me start by sharing two incidents first, both from my personal experience. The first incident took place in Hawaii, where I studied and became closely associated with a Buddhist monastery for the first time in my life. There were only 2 resident nuns when I was there, and I had always thought that this monastery was for nuns only. But one day, one of the nuns told me that her shishong, her Dharma brother, would be coming back soon. I was a bit surprised and almost concluded in my own mind that I had been mistaken in thinking that this is a monastery only for nuns. Even when I finally met this Dharma brother of the nun, who was so obviously a nun too, I was not quite sure whether my eyes were confusing me. What I did not realize back then was that it has been a tradition in Chinese monasteries for nuns to address each other as Dharma brothers, not sisters. This is because the nuns are now considered 大丈夫. Literally meaning actually big or grand man or husband in Chinese. The other incident happened in Taiwan. As the resident director for a study abroad program for American college students in Taiwan, part of my responsibilities is to lead field trips or visit to various sites in Taiwan, including Buddhist temples and organizations, my favorite. Well, one time we visited the Tea Foundation, the largest Buddhist charity organization that's known in Taiwan, and we were shown a documentary of the founder, Venerable Zheng Yan. The documentary was done in Chinese, but it included English subtitles. Well, as soon as the documentary started, however, I found several students starting to turn their heads to me. The students looked puzzled whenever the pronoun he appeared in the documentary to refer to Venerable Zheng Yan, because they remember I had told them earlier that Tzu Chi was established by a Buddhist nun. Finally, at the end of the documentary, one of the students raised her hand and posed this question about the use of the pronoun he. We were then informed that Venerable Zheng Yan was referred to as he because a Chinese nun was rendered gender neutral. raises questions about the term 大丈夫 because they knew that 大丈夫 literally meant big husband. The students, though still looking puzzled, did not pursue the matter further. Some of them probably could not care less, yet a few still looked rather uncertain. To be honest, I would not be surprised at all if my American students were not convinced. As a native speaker of Mandarin Chinese and a Chuan linguist, I myself am never convinced about such a statement. So what's the problem of 大丈夫? Well, if 大丈夫 is different from 丈夫 and could be gender neutral, we should be able to find some linguistic evidence to prove that 大 in Chinese could mean something like beyond, so that 大 could really change the original gender reference of 丈夫. However, if you look up the word 大 in the Chinese dictionary, you will see that it's never the case. As an adjective or modifier, 大 basically means big, huge, or grand. For example, the Chinese word for house is 房子, and a big house is 大房子. When the word used to refer to a person, 大 means senior, or someone in higher position or rank. So 大姐 is literally a compound of big and sister, meaning elder sister. 大老板, literally big, plus boss refers to a boss of high rank. So therefore, we see that the adjective 大 never changes the attribute of the noun it modifies. Even in more abstract cases or more metaphorical usages, such as 大人, referring to a grown-up or a government official in ancient Chinese society, we see that 大人 still refers to a person. 人 is a person, just with a higher position. So 大 does not change the internal attribute or essence of a noun, much less the sex or gender of the person it modifies. To give another example, we know that in the past, when men were still allowed to have more than one wife in ancient Chinese feudal society, the first wife was referred to as 大老婆. But then 大 does not make the modified wife gender neutral. In contemporary Chinese usage, we find that a male chauvinist is translated as a 大男人, and a female chauvinist is translated into a 大女人. A 大男人 is still a man, and a 大女人 is still a woman. Therefore, to use 大丈夫 to refer to all Sangao members in Chinese is similar to using the so-called generic words he or man to refer to all human beings, which is rather exclusionary of women, and therefore problematic from a feminist perspective. To refer to female Sangha members using male terminology is therefore confusing to anyone outside the Chinese Buddhist community, especially to those from the West. It further raises questions about routinely associating greatness with being male. So now what's the problem with thermal brother and the pronoun he? Okay. Well, for the past few decades, feminists in the West, including scholars, educators, and researchers, have been trying their best to humanize the English language. They see English as a rather sexist language, particularly in the now outdated use of he and men, so-called generic terms, to refer to all human beings. An activist, Bardal Wan, even used the term Manglish to expose the gender bias that is embedded in English. Alternatives to such generic masculine nouns and pronouns have been proposed to replace all these gender bias usages in English, especially in daily expressions and titles. Examples include the emergence of words such as chair or chairperson instead of chairman, myth instead of miss or miss, and he or she or the plural form they instead of simply using he for all human beings. Even in the world of religion, there have been rewritings of sacred liturgy, feminist readings of the Bible, and feminist theologies in which God is no longer seen or understood as he. Therefore, Western feminists definitely have a very difficult time understanding why Chinese nuns address each other as Dharma brothers, and why Chinese Buddhists choose the sexist pronoun he to refer to a Chinese nun, when Western feminists have fought so hard to get rid of this sexist pronoun, and especially when Buddhism is said to be a religion in which all beings are equal. So what are the terms of Buddhist nuns? Are there proper ways and improper ways to address Buddhist nuns? Does it matter how Buddhist nuns are addressed? Well, in May 2003, 3 associations in Taiwan filed complaints against a TV commercial made by a food company, in which the term Nihu was used to refer to Buddhist nuns. The Chinese Bhikshuni Association explained in their complaint letter to the company that Nihu was not a proper term for Buddhist nuns. In the word Nihu, the feminine suffix ni from Sanskrit was added to the Chinese word gu, which refers to senior unmarried lay females, namely auntie, which has nothing to do with the Sangha. The Bhikshuni Association's letter also explained that the correct term to be used is Bhichoni, the transliteration of the Sanskrit term Bhikshuni in Mandarin Chinese. The letter also stated that the association would ask their followers to boycott all the vegetarian products produced by this company if the food company did not immediately take this TV commercial off the air. So another protest against the use of the term Nihu took place 2 years later. On October 27, 2005, Venerable Zhao Hui held a press conference where 2 other nuns raised 2 huge posters that read, "I'm not called Nihu, call me Bhikshuni," and "I'm not called Nihu, call me Nishi." This is the picture of it. Okay? Here, the term Nishi is considered more respectful because Shi denotes a teacher. Venerable Zhao Hui also pointed out that she did a quick search on the Yahoo.com search engine the night before the press conference, and she confirmed that the term Nihu is indeed always associated with negative connotations or even sex scandals. This negative association explains why most of the Taiwanese nuns I know prefer to be addressed simply as Shifu, or actually they prefer Fa Shi, Dharma teacher, because Shifu, Fu is father, okay? Fa Shi conveys no gender differentiation. So what different terms are used to name and address Buddhist nuns in other languages and cultures? Do they also carry negative connotations like the Chinese term Nihu? Are these names inclusive and respectful? I have listed some of the names here, so maybe we can reflect upon that. Well, before we answer this question, let's reconsider what's in the name. Oops. So what's in the name? The world-famous writer Shakespeare suggests that the name of the rose should not change the essence or fragrance of the rose. In reality, however, we know that language, including names, titles, and labeling, is never neutral. Language is powerful and political. Names and titles are especially so. They carry the attitude a society holds towards a certain group of people. The power structure of a society can also be easily revealed through a study of who has the power to name and what the names given to a specific group of people are. For example, in ancient Chinese society, the fact that women have no names corresponds to women's very law or lack of status in that patriarchal feudal society. In early Chinese society too, where labor is important and male descendants are more valued because they carry on the family lineage, women receive unbelievably undesirable names. For example, my grandmother's name literally meant salt, salty. That is distasteful. Yan, okay, Xu Yan, bitter and distasteful. Her last name happened to be Xu, which is a homophone to bitter, okay? So some other popular names for women include Zhao Di, literally meaning to bring or waive brothers, or Zu, enough girls, no more girls. So some women were given names that denote dislike and even hate. Okay? From this, we can infer the status of Taiwanese women in the old days. We can only imagine how women bearing such names must have felt to be called by such derogatory names throughout their lives, continually reminding them of their worthlessness and influencing how they saw themselves. Some Buddhists may think that as Buddhists, we should not worry about names, but simply focus on our practice. Nevertheless, if we agree that it is mindfulness that Buddhists practice, And if we agree that speech is also something that we should be mindful about in our daily lives, we should never trivialize the consequences of naming or for naming karma, if I may. Moreover, as the world outside the Buddhist community is becoming familiar of the concept of inclusive language, Buddhists should not excuse themselves from becoming more inclusive in terms of language use. But what do we mean by inclusive language? Okay, the concept of inclusive language, a quick internet search turns up pages of links that introduce on what inclusive languages mean, what it matters, how it works, and all the do's and don'ts for the use of inclusive language. One easy online definition of inclusive language is language that assumes that women and men are fully equivalent participants in human society. We also find writing guidelines for students in various university writing centers, such as inclusive languages, any language that does not stereotype or demean men or women. When your professor requires inclusive language, you need merely avoid non-inclusive language, sometimes called sexist language. Well, the concept and implementation of inclusive language are not without debate or controversy, of course. But for Buddhists, I believe that there's no conflict in incorporating this concept into our daily practice. The concept of inclusive language can help increase our mindfulness in our daily language use. There's absolutely nothing wrong with using this concept to help ensure our personal language use is inclusive and that our ways of addressing each other is respectful. Now, we Buddhists are very proud that Buddhism is an egalitarian religion in which all beings are viewed as being equal. But how truly equal are we, even in this human realm? How truly equal are all members in the Buddhist community? How equal are men and women in Buddhist societies? If women are excluded even in the language used among Sangha members, and if mindfulness and disrespectful language for women is still being used in Buddhist circles, then how truly equal are we? We have noted the confusing and demeaning non-inclusive terms of address that are used for Chinese nuns, such as Da Zhang Hu, Dharma Brother, the Pranati, and Buddhist paper. So if we agree, I would say that, should I continue? Okay, all right. So how are we addressing our venerable nuns? Are we naming and addressing each other with respect? My conclusion is that let's hope that our Buddhist practice will foster true equality, perhaps by starting from the use of inclusive language. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Shobha Ranidash, who earned her PhD from Otani University of Kyoto in 2004. A native of India, she is currently a postdoctoral fellow of the Japan Society for the Promotion of Science at Otani University in Kyoto. Her primary field of research is women in Buddhism, particularly in India and Japan. Currently, she is preparing a biographical database on bhikkhunis of the Theravada tradition. And the title of her talk is Translating the Dharma and Gender Discrimination. The blame should be on us. Shobha.
Thank you. The title of my paper is Translating the Dharma and Gender Discrimination. The blame should be on us. The problem of gender discrimination is one of various problems existing in Buddhism. A number of texts suggest discrimination against women. Discrimination in Buddhist practice can be found in the 8 strict conditions put on the ordination of women, the superiority of bhikshus, and the subordinate status of the bhikshunis. The language of the canonical text has been seen as using inferior terms for women, such as the 5 obstructions of a woman, her inability to become Buddha, etc. On the surface, of course, these things point towards gender inequality, and Buddhist thought and the Buddha himself are generally given the blame. But how far is this true? Most likely, the controversy of gender discrimination in Buddhism became prominent with the Buddha's refusal to women's entry into the Sangha. When Mahaprajapati went to the Lord and asked for his permission to become a bhikshuni, he denied her. The opinion of gender discrimination is rooted in this denial. Here, the reply of the Buddha should be quoted. Mahaprajapati begged thrice, and each time the Buddha's reply was the same. According to the Pali canonical text, the reply was, Alaho kami mate ruchi, matugama tathagata pavedite dhamma vinaye, agarasma anagaryam pabbajati. This episode has been translated and interpreted variously. Below is given an English rendition of the Chinese and Japanese text, along with a few well-known English translations of the above Pali statement chronologically. The Chinese text Zhongmen says, the Buddha said, stop, Agotami. Women must not wish to enter into my dharma and Vinaya. The Chinese Madhyamagama says, stop, Agotami, you must not think like this. The Chinese translation of the Dharma Vinaya says, stop, Agotami, you must not say like this, that you want to let the woman renounce the household and enter the path of the Buddha. The Chinese translation of the Mahishasaka Vinaya says, stop, you must not say like this, because all the past Buddhas didn't allow the women to renounce the household. It will be the same during the time of the future Buddhas too. The Chinese Sutra Hoso Sutamichi Kochin says, stop, Agotami, there is no need to do it. The English translation of the Anguttara Nikaya Pali of the Pali Text Society says, enough, Agotami, set not your heart upon the going forth of women from the home to the homeless life into the discipline of Dhamma declared by the Tathagata. The Japanese translation of the above Pali statement in the Vinaya Pitaka says, stop, Agotami, you must not wish that the women should leave the household and become a renunciant in the Dharma and Vinaya preached by the Tathagata. The English translation of the Vinaya Pitaka in Pali of the sacred books of the East says, enough, Agotami, let it not please thee that women should be allowed to do so. The above translation somehow express a strong refusal. Here the expression alam mate ruchi should be noticed. Generally, alam is used for a strong negative expression like enough, stop, etc. But according to the Pali English Dictionary of the Pali Text Society, if the term alam is used together with a negative and a vocative form, then it expresses a very soft meaning of the entire sentence, like look out, take care, like this. Such examples may be found elsewhere too. The commentary of the Vinaya Pitaka and the commentary of the Anguttara Nikaya comment further that the Buddha refused the ordination of Mahaprajapati thrice because he wanted to let her know the importance of his Dhamma, and at the same time he wanted her to be serious enough in observing the rules and regulations of the Sangha. If he had allowed her entrance immediately, she might have taken it lightly. In other words, a true rendering of the Buddha's words makes him severe and cautionary towards women, but not discriminatory. He was warning her, not refusing her. This is the only episode that denies entry of women into the Sangha. After this incident, women had a smooth entry into the Sangha, but this episode was cited frequently with several interpretations that made it complicated gradually. It seems that discriminatory terms for women were pronounced during the later phase of the Buddhist text, that is, in the translations and in the commentaries. For example, the commentary of the Therigatha, the term Padaparisarika, or literally serving on one's feet, has been used with the meaning of wife for the certain women following Mahaprajapati, whereas in the main text we cannot see this term. In the commentary of the Majjhima Nikaya, Mahaprajapati has been depicted as the wife of Venerable Nanda in one of her former lives. Here too, the term Padaparisarika has been used for wife. The Pali canonical commentaries are full of such examples. It seems wives were kept in the status of maid servants, as the literal meaning of the term says. The term Gharani, Dara, Jaya, or Bharya could have been used instead, as these terms were already in use during the commentary period. A similar expression is found in the above mentioned Chinese translation of the Mahishasaka Vinaya. The term Bei has been used for the second women. Please forgive me for my bad pronunciation of Chinese. This term is used for a plural expression as well as to express a bad or inferior sense of somebody. Since the term has been used here for the plural form, most likely Bei conveys the later negative meaning. These examples are a clear indication of the social status of women at the time and a reflection of the social mores in Buddhism. The Lotus Sutra is often quoted for stating the 5 obstructions of a woman that do not allow her to become a Buddha unless and until her body is transformed into a male figure. According to the Sanskrit text of the Lotus Sutra, when the 8-year-old daughter of Sagara, the Dragon King, said that she had obtained enlightenment, Venerable Shariputra showed his doubt, saying that it was not possible, as there was no example of a woman attaining the Buddhahood. Till then, Adyapi, no woman had achieved the following 5 ranks, that is the rank of a Brahma, a Shakra, a great king, a universal monarch, and a Bodhisattva who is incapable of sliding back, a Vaivartika Bodhisattva. Even so, the daughter of the King Sagara transformed herself into a male body and appeared as an enlightened one. This part of the Lotus Sutra is quoted very often as an example of gender discrimination in Buddhism. But we must not forget that it is the comment made by Venerable Shariputra, not by the Buddha himself. Further, attention should be paid to the term Adyapi in Sanskrit, which means still, yet, to this stage, etc. If no woman has occupied these 5 places so far, it doesn't mean that she cannot attain it in future. Instead of taking it as Venerable Shariputra's comment or refusal, we may simply accept the statement as his astonishment. He questioned with astonishment about such a wonderful and incredible thing that he had never heard of before. One more important point is to be noticed. I have used here 3 editions of the Sanskrit text of the Lotus Sutra, and in all the editions it is written high places or ranks, Panchasthanani. When Dharmaraksha translated the Lotus Sutra into Chinese in 268 AD, he followed the Sanskrit interpretation and used the term Wu Wei, which means 5 places or ranks. But after him, the text was translated by Kumarajiva in 406 AD, and a very discriminatory expression is found. He used the term Uzan, which means 5 obstructions or obstacles. In addition to it, Kumarajiva's translation also gives the following comments. As a reply to the Dragon King's daughter, Shariputra says, "You say that you will soon attain the highest path. This is difficult to believe. Why is this? The female body is polluted. It is not a fit vessel for the Dharma. How can you attain the highest enlightenment?" This part of Shariputra's comment is neither found in the Sanskrit text nor in the work of Dharmaraksha, because his translation, Kumarajiva's translation is based on a manuscript from Kucha. Unfortunately, as the manuscript is not extant, it is difficult to say if it was really a part of the manuscript or the original idea of Kumarajiva. But one thing is certain, that when the text travelled from India to Central Asia, it was influenced by the local thoughts of the time, and later interpolations of gender discrimination could be possible. It's a very good example of how place and time affected translating and interpreting the Buddhist texts. Although there are 3 Chinese translations of the Lotus Sutra extant, unfortunately, Kumarajiva's work is more popular in most of the Mahayana countries. In Japan, it added sufficient fuel to the thought of gender discrimination. Further, the 5 ranks or obstructions are different in the Sanskrit and in the Chinese text. The term Maharaja of the Sanskrit text is not found in any of the Chinese texts. Conversely, the term Mara doesn't find a place in the Sanskrit text. These 5 ranks or obstructions should have been the same in all the versions if they were really important factors on the path of women's enlightenment. Here it is interesting to note that various other texts also mention these 5 ranks or obstructions, although the Lotus Sutra is cited the most. All these texts came into existence in between 207 to 601 AD. Hence, it may be guessed that at the time women were granted a lower social status compared to the men, and discrimination towards the women prevailed in the society, which obviously had an influence on the Buddhist texts too. In few texts, the 5 ranks or obstructions are related to women when Mahaprajapati begged permission to the Buddha to become a bhikshuni. In chapter 12 of the Sanskrit text of the Lotus Sutra, the Buddha predicts for the bhikshunis Mahaprajapati and Yashodhara that they will become Tathagatas in future, named Sarvasattva Priyadarsana and Rashmi Satasahasra Paripurnadhaja respectively. Although no such conditions like transformation to a male body are given here, the names are male names. Interestingly, in both the Chinese translations, it is impossible to make out if the names are male names. It might be possible that in Sanskrit, the masculine forms of names are used for a correct grammatical completion, as the term Tathagata is a masculine gender in Sanskrit. Thus, it It might be a little extreme to consider that a woman cannot be a Tathagata in her female name or female existence. Whether the Buddha actually made discriminatory comments is a big question mark. There are some contradictions found here and there in the text that question their authenticity. For example, let's examine the 8 strict conditions according to the Pali sources. In the Vinaya Pitaka and the Anguttara Nikaya, the 6th condition says that a woman can be ordained only when she completes 2 years as a probationer. But in fact, it didn't happen either in the case of Mahapajapati or in the case of Sakyan women accompanying her. They could have been asked to spend 2 years as a probationer to fulfill the condition. Not only this, it doesn't find even a place in the 8 strict conditions of the Chinese translation of the Madhyamagama. Many other such contradictions may be found in the canonical text that cast some doubt in later interpolations. Even if we accept for a while that it was the opinion of the Buddha himself that women should not be allowed into the Sangha, he may be justified on the following grounds. First, most probably the Buddha's prime objection was for Mahapajapati. It might be guessed that as a queen she had never witnessed the toughest experiences of life, so it would be a very arduous task for her to go from door to door with a begging bowl for her daily livelihood. Second, this is not a problem confined to Mahapajapati alone. The second time when she appeared before the Buddha, she was accompanied by a large group of Sakya women. Although Mahapajapati seemed to be very sincere and firm in her decision and approach, still the rest of the women might not have been on the same line. Third, the second clan was not a very large one, and the inadequacy of a huge number of women was therefore obvious. There are able-minded persons in each and every society. The Buddhist age was no exception. A famous incident may be cited here. Once, when Uppalavarna Theri was living in a forest, she was raped by her cousin Ananda Manava, who was a lover before she renounced the world. Accordingly, there was every possibility of teasing and insulting monastic women on their way to alms collection. Fifth, the denial of the women may be considered from a different angle, that the Buddha denied not the women, but the persons of the opposite sex against the members of the Sangha. If the first Sangha had been composed by the women, then the men might have faced the same situation. Women were not the problem, rather it was the problem of two opposite sexes growing and functioning together. Thus, when reading a text, we sometimes consider the subject matter just from its ostensible meaning. This ultimately leads us into a quick manner. The problem doesn't lie in the scriptures themselves, rather it is our misleading interpretations that often grows out of the subtle disagreement in translation. What has come down to us today as gender discrimination might rather be seen as the outcome of misinterpretations that grew out of the social limitations of the time and the places where the texts were written, and the linguistic demands of the target languages as the texts moved from South Asia to East Asia. Thank you very much.